You're listening to the Pure Fury Creations Entertainment Network. The views and opinions expressed on this episode are those of the speaker and do not necessarily reflect the views, opinions, or philosophies of the PFC Entertainment Network or any of the affiliates that make this show possible. This show has also been rated M for mature audiences only.
We don't talk about that.
And welcome back to Shh, we don't talk about that. Doing a little different this week, so I'm alone in my house, and Natalie is far away from me. It's sad.
I'm alone in my sister's house in Kentucky for the week.
I'm sorry. Thank you. It's our sister, according to her. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Yes, we went to Kelly, our beloved sister. Natalie's actually sister of her heart. We went to high school together. So. All known each other, and we just celebrated Kelly's 50th birthday in Tennessee, and it was fantastic.
Yeah,
except for
it was great. It was great.
Yeah.
We had a lot of fun.
We did. Yeah, it was a good time. So, but now we're back, and we're here to talk about a part of my journey that was a little different. You know, it's a little different to come onto a podcast and talk about another podcast, but that's what we're here to do. And the reason that we're doing that is because this podcast was pivotal. It was incremental in my growth. And it's called The Adult Chair. It's by Michelle Chalfant. And it was created, it says her first podcast was on November 21st of 2014. So it's been going for almost 10 years. I probably found it about 4 or 5 years ago. It was during the COVID time, I think, because I was driving to Ann Arbor and I had to have something to listen to. And I don't remember what it was that I think I saw it on one of my groups that was about like adult children of narcissist parents or something like that. It was one of those groups and somebody mentioned it. And I was like, checked it out. And the first podcast just explains the premise. It's probably, I don't know, like 20 minutes long. It's not very long.
Yeah.
And she talks about how she's been a therapist herself, a psychotherapist, for 25 years. And the adult chair she describes it as simple psychology meeting grounded spirituality, or meets grounded spirituality. But she was looking for ways to love herself authentically and had been struggling herself and found this model. And then with permission of the person who had kind of created it themselves, she was able to take it, turn it into the adult chair and run with it. Yeah. And the adult chair, she actually has chairs in her office that her clients sit in. And she uses them as a way for them to connect with each part of their ego, as we're going to talk about, whether it's the true child, the adolescent, or the adult. And she goes through and she describes what each of those things mean in depth through the first 5. The first episode's about describing. So the first 4 episodes, because then episode 2 is the child chair, episode 3 is the adolescent chair, and episode 4 is the adult chair. And then she gets into, I think the next episode is about triggers. And so she immediately goes into giving you tools to help you.
Yeah.
She describes what the premise is, she describes how she lays it out, and then she immediately goes into the tools. And the thing that struck me when I first started reading it or listening to it was when she got to the adolescent chair. Like, I understood the child chair. I understood feeling your true emotions, because that's what she talked about. Your child chair is she has you sit in that child chair, you are connecting with that 0 to, as she says it, 0 to 7 part of you that has true emotions, where you first shaped who you were going to be in. And we've talked about this kind of a few times already, but that's your child chair. And connecting with that is when you are saying, I feel lonely, I feel unwanted, I feel sad, I feel loved, I feel cared for. It's those true emotions. Instead of saying, I'm mad at him, I want to hit him, or I want to run away from her, or I want to scream at them, or they make me so just angry. You know, connecting deeper on a deeper level. That I was like, okay, I get that. Then she got into the adolescent. And that one really was like oh, wait a minute. I'm living in my adolescent most of the time. Because
You're
the
like,
adolescent.
Oh, fuck. How did I get here?
Oh, yeah. It was an oh, fuck moment.
Thought I was a grown-up.
And it was an oh, fuck moment for sure. And there's so many things, like so many tips and things that she gave. One of the tips that she gave me that has always been helpful to me now is when I get triggered, the first thing I ask myself is, how old do I feel right now?
Yeah.
Because if I feel like I'm 12 or 13, I'm probably my adolescent. And if I feel like I'm 4 or 5, I'm probably closer to my child. And if I can just dig into what is fueling that, then I'm going to have a deeper connection. But that adolescent can't connect with the present moment. It can't connect with present emotions. All it can think of is what has happened in the past and how I must use that information to protect me and predict the future.
Yep.
That's what the adolescent does and is for. So, and I was like, wait, what?
Yeah.
What? I had to go back and re-listen to the episode again, and it was like, oh my God. Fuck. So what do I do now? And then I moved on to the adult chair, which the adult chair just describes how you get there, or what you want to get to. It doesn't tell you really how to get there. You had to listen to the other podcasts.
Yeah.
And probably the first 20 to 30 podcasts, everyone was like, oh my God, what? Are you kidding me? You know, like turning it off sometimes. And why didn't I learn this? Or connecting with her and just crying because I could feel the emotion so deeply.
Yeah.
It really changed the way that I then was able to perceive messages my therapists were giving me. And that was what made my work pivot and change. Because I didn't listen to the podcast every day. I did for a little bit. I was listening to because I was driving to Ann Arbor quite a bit. But then I went for a while, and I actually don't listen to it very often now. Once in a while, I'll pop it in and I'll listen to one. But I still find myself going back to those teachings that she gave me and combining them with what I've learned from my current therapy. It's not like it's just the adult chair. It's also the DBT and the EMDR and all of those things together combined that have now given me this place where I'm like, even when I have the days where I stumble, I'm like, okay, I bet you there's a podcast on the adult chair about this. If nothing else, I'll bet you I could go and listen to some tool or skill, because remember, our show, although we want to give tools, is really more about giving people hope.
Yeah.
That there is healing on the other side and showing that journey.
For sure.
We want to give those tools, but we're not here necessarily teaching a lesson every week. Michelle is. That is the purpose of her podcast, is every week is a lesson. And she has, in the beginning, she has a co-host, Pete Wright, I think is his name. I can't remember. Pete for sure.
Does he go away eventually?
He does.
It's just her?
Yeah, he's her producer. He's her executive producer. And I think that I'm just extrapolating. It's stories and assumptions. I'm in my adolescent right now. But I think that Michelle had nerves about being on a podcast by herself. and speaking just to the ether. And so they kind of did this, like, and he would ask her questions, and he was very excited. I'm sure you noticed that. Like, he's, yes, very excited. He jumps in and he asks a lot of questions and has a lot of like, oh, are you saying it this way? And so they almost do little therapy sessions.
Mm-hmm.
And that goes on until she starts, it's closer to like the 100 mark or somewhere around there. I think she transitions away from him and starts bringing on other professionals.
Oh, okay.
And people who are experts in like the, love languages or ACE, adverse childhood experiences, and how that can, or Imago, those kinds of things. So she'll have different experts that'll come on and explain different types of, again, that psychology, but also give you tools like this is one thing that might connect with you or it might not. And one of the things I love is that she says a lot of the times, like, this might work for you, it might not. Like, if it doesn't, don't use it.
Right.
And there are some things that she said that I'm like, oh no, that's too kooky for me. But then there's, that's very few and far between.
Sure.
And as I open myself up to even the suggestion, even when I think like, there's no way I could do that, but I still leave the door open. Like, okay, I know I said I couldn't do that, but maybe.
Right.
We'll just think about it. And then before you know it, I'm friggin' meditating regularly or journaling, because she's how I started journaling, actually. She did a 30-day journal challenge. And I was so into her podcast, what I had done, the help that I had gotten from it, that I was like, man, she's already helped me so much. What's it going to hurt to just try this shit?
And she's got one on her webpage. It's free for anybody to do, and it's a 14-day journaling challenge. So I was like, that's pretty cool for people that don't. I'll get a lot of clients that are like, yeah, I don't like to write. I'm like, I know. A lot of people don't. However, the more you keep it in here, the worse it is. So if you regurgitate it out on some paper, it's really going to help you relieve some of that heaviness and that stress and the anxiety. It's like, it's going to take it out and allow your brain to just be like, okay, I got this for a little bit.
It's the external thing. And I will say this, you don't have to just write it. Like, I have Dupuytren's. So writing is hard for me. So sometimes I'll video record. Sometimes I'll audio record. Sometimes it's just, I'll just take a walk through the fucking woods and just word vomit out everything that I need to get out and feel so much better at the end, and often have solved my own problem. If I will just open myself up to like my teachings and what I know, and not be stuck in my feelings, and not be like, I'm just going to stay in my adolescent. I'm not going to accept any other help. So for me, it was so empowering, because even though I was going to therapy, it was like I was getting homework, and I was like, yeah, but I was so exhausted by everything that I was being told in therapy. I couldn't remember everything that they said. I couldn't remember exactly what they told me to do. I knew the basics, but then I was so tired, and I was like, I just did therapy. I just don't want to do anymore.
Yeah.
The podcast was different. It was a different way of hearing it, a different way of experiencing it, a different way of being able to look at all of these factors and be like, wow, maybe it is possible. Maybe I can do that. And hearing somebody, she also is not a survivor of childhood abuse in the same way, but she had her own childhood issues, and it caused her to have codependency issues and a lot of the similar things that I have dealt with. And hearing her, even though she's had the schooling, so that also obviously helped her get a hold of a lot. And I think that's where it started for her when I've listened to her talk. She went to go get therapy, realized she liked it, and then started to go to school to become a therapist because she wanted to heal herself and then also help others, which is I think this is the case for a lot of therapists, but
yeah,
I didn't have that schooling. I have been figuring it out on my own. Hearing her give that advice in such a boiled down way, because most of her podcasts in the beginning were short. They were under half an hour, and so it's very digestible.
okay. And they were pretty easy to listen to. Like they are. And a lot of it, I was like, yeah, I do that.
Yes.
I do that.
I saw you.
I do that. I do that when I talk to my clients. So I'm like, okay, I can definitely, and I see where she went with like her design of the chairs and why she set it up that way, which is fantastic.
And that she has clients use those chairs in a physical sense, because just like journaling, like physically transferring from the child, like you're in the child, you felt your emotions now, and you start spewing out, and they shouldn't do that. Why are they doing this to me? And she would be like, okay, move over to your adolescent now, because you're in your adolescent right now. You can spew all that out, but you need to be in the adolescent chair. And your brain goes, oh, yeah, okay. And as soon as you start questioning your behavior, you're already automatically moving into your adult.
Yep.
Because the adolescent doesn't go, why am I doing this? The adolescent goes, why are you doing this to me?
Yep.
Why is everyone else doing this? Why are they doing this? This is their fault. They need to fix it. They need to stop it. The adult goes, okay, what can I control?
Yep.
And then moves from there. And she was the one who really helped me learn too how to set a boundary in a way that felt comfortable. Just by the way she described it. And I don't remember what it was exactly that she said, but it was just basically like, your boundary is not about hurting anybody. It's not about trying to set up a wall. It's about teaching people how to treat you.
Yes.
And when you set a boundary, you're actually telling that person, hey, I want you in my life. And I just need you to treat me this way.
Yeah.
When you walk away, that's when you're like, I'm not setting a boundary. I'm just cutting you off.
Or I'm running from things.
Right. But you're blowing everything up versus saying, wait a minute, what do I need to be able to have this relationship? And they may not be able to give you what you need. It's just being able to ask for it and recognize what you need, ask for it in a calm, articulate manner, and then be able to accept if they say they can't do that. Okay, well, maybe this relationship isn't what I thought it was. Doesn't mean that you have to end the relationship, but you might have to pivot on what it is.
Because everybody's like growing and changing, and nobody's growing and changing at the same rate, at the same speed, in the same way. And so because of that, like we can't expect, hey, I'm doing all these things and I'm growing and I'm getting healthier and I'm feeling better and I'm doing all these things, that somebody else in our life is right there next to us.
Right.
Like they might be supporting us in some way, shape, or form, but they are not on our journey. They are on their journey. And so we can't expect, like, okay, well, I'm better now, therefore everybody should treat me better now. But if nobody else has changed and nobody else recognizes, then we have to be the ones to say, in the past, yes, I did accept this behavior. However, I do no longer accept it. I need you to speak to me with respect or honesty, or and you do not scream at me or throw things at me. Like that is not going to be okay with me anymore. And if you continue to do so, we need to have a different conversation overall.
Yeah, right. And that's all about being in that adult chair.
Yes.
You've already processed. She talks about processing those natural emotions. She talks about how, and she was also the one who helped me learn that if you sit with a true emotion, just sit with it. Your body actually can't hold on to it for more than about like 90 seconds before, because you're processing it, and then your body's like, okay, I feel good now. I don't know what to do with that. Let's let that go. We'll move that to the back, and it moves on to the next thing.
Yeah.
Now, we're not talking about like you've lost your spouse or your parent or whatever, and you're going to feel the grief of that and be over it. It's not like it's not going to come back. Just in that moment, you are able to move through it.
Yeah.
versus if you hold on to all the stories attached to it, like you're adolescent. It's never, this grief is never going to go away. I'm never going to feel better. All of those stories are what keep us kind of in the spiral. She talked about those things. She talked about, it was actually Dave who said it is unrealistic for us to expect two people to be in the same place at the same time, growing at the same rate for your whole lives. But I think Michelle actually kind of reiterated that same thing because it is a message that people need to hear. And the other thing that I learned, just because I got better doesn't mean that people have automatically forgotten how I used to be.
Yeah, that's huge.
Forgotten. People see you through the lens of how they've known you.
Yes.
And it takes a while for them to learn that it is different. They learn that through how you behave and what you say, and then the boundaries you set. And it's your responsibility to stay in your adult chair when they start reacting in their adolescent because they think you mean something else. Right? That doesn't mean you do. That doesn't mean you got to take it personal. And that's where I've had okay, they remember me when I used to be all wound up and really sensitive and get really emotional. And they remember, if I'd have lost my cell phone previously and I couldn't get into my email and I was missing really important doctor's appointments, I would have been a blubbering mess.
Right.
And I was also around strangers.
Yeah.
And I'm not great with strangers. And instead, I just was the first night wasn't ideal for me. I didn't feel like I was my ideal self. But the second night, I was I'm just going to have fun. And whatever happens, happens. It's with God now. We're having a good time. I couldn't have done that had I not been able to figure out how to sit in my adult chair. Yeah. And I thought about that. I actually thought about, okay, what chair do you want to be in on this trip? What chair do you want people to remember you on in this trip? Because this is Kelly's 50th birthday. And the last thing you want to do is fuck that up.
Right.
And then I was they're from the military, man. They'll hide your body and they'll never find you. And I was no, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
I mean, we could.
Yeah, I know.
We're not going to do that one.
But it's she used to be an MP. Natalie. Was Kelly an MP too?
No, she's in the medical field.
Yeah,
I was yeah.
Yeah. So she knows what arteries to cut, and you know where to.
Exactly. Exactly. No, I don't remember any of that.
Right? Yeah. No.
Not at all.
I'm deaf. You don't speak English.
Yes. Yeah.
So, I mean, that's where that's what the adult chair did for me. And it continues to do for me. It is not it's not my crutch. I don't rely on it all the time. But when I need something there's something that is blocking, or I need a meditation. She's got some great meditations. Oh, that's the other thing I want to mention too. You talked about her writing. She's also got a meditation on her website that is free that helps you connect with your inner child. And it's a series, completely free, and it's wonderful. And it actually was the first time that I was able to connect with my inner child was because of Michelle Chalfant. And I think that's a big part of why this shift happened. Was because of that specific meditation. I'll never forget it. And her teaching you about the timeline and it rolling up on you and visualizing it, and then walking off at the age that I was and being able to talk to myself at 5 years old or 4 years old. And for the first time, ask myself, what is wrong? And hear myself say, I just don't feel like anybody loves me.
Yeah.
And I remember saying, I took a big gulp and I said, well, Joanna, I love you. And I think you matter.
Yeah.
And this whole thing shifted in my chest. And I just sobbed for probably a minute.
Mm-hmm.
And then I came out of it and felt such peace.
Yeah.
And I have used her meditations consistently since. When I need to connect with my inner child, I don't have to go to the meditation. I can remember it. And I have used that tool. She also talks about how she will take her inner child and just, as she talks, just pop it out, like when she's driving, and be like, "How you doing, little Michelle? What's up? What's going on?" And because she has a regular dialogue with her inner child, it's very easy for her to do that. And that I didn't understand that to begin with. Now that I have a regular dialogue with mine, it is much easier to do that. I can pop right in, or I don't usually take her out. I usually go to her. But I can go right to her. She's got a room that I picture her in. There's a whole scenario, and I can immediately get to what's going on.
Yeah.
And I may not like the answer, and I generally definitely don't like what I'm going to have to do to fix it.
Yeah.
But it gives me peace and calm and strength and a feeling of autonomy over my own mental health that I have never had before. Because people tell you need to connect with your inner child, but nobody really teaches you how to do it.
Yeah,
Michelle
they don't
does.
really describe why that's important, why it's relevant.
No.
And a lot of people, well, you need to do your inner child work. I don't know what that means. What does that mean?
Well, or they think inner child work means just going and this is part of inner child work, but this isn't what we're referring to, like going and just playing in a field and expressing yourself as a child.
Right.
That's not what we're talking about when we say inner child work. We're talking about going and literally finding that inner part of yourself that is wounded, that was wounded from that 0 to 6, 0 to 7 year age, and saying, what's wrong? What hurts? How can I help? What do you need? And then listening to the answer and being honest with yourself about what you need, and then showing up for yourself the best that you can to give yourself what you need afterwards. And Michelle really does a great job in not one podcast, it's multiple ones, but of learning, of showing you ways to do that. If nothing else, I would encourage every person to go to her website and download her inner child meditation and learn how to connect with your inner child. Listen to her inner child podcast first and listen to her explanation of why connecting with your inner child is so important. But if you don't connect with those true emotions, you can't process anything in a real, true way. Everything's blocking, everything's noise, everything's like, I'm just protecting myself and I don't know what's going on. You have to be able to connect down with what is the root feeling. And it's often not, I'm mad or I'm scared. It's something deeper. It's, I feel abandoned. It's, I feel unwanted. I feel unloved. It's bigger than people typically delve.
Well, because it's easier to stack different, more acceptable emotions on top of that as deemed by society, especially for men. It's better for them to express anger than it is for them to show fear or sadness. It's better for them to express lust than it is for them to show love or nurturing or caring, because the rest of society is like, you as a man need to do this. And for so many years, we've just kind of turned that into that for them.
Correct.
And for us, then they just look at us and they're like, why are you so emotional all the time? You're just so dramatic all the time. When it's like, we feel our feelings way different than men do, but then we express them in a much different way. And if we're not taught how to express them in a happy way, then we're looking erratic, we're looking emotional, we're looking dramatic, all of the things. So it's like, okay, we need to take a step back and we need to ask ourselves, like, what does little me need? What does little me feel? And being able to find a way to give that to ourselves, because we've been taught, just wait, somebody will come along and fix it.
Well, and we've also been taught that certain emotions are masculine and certain emotions are feminine.
Well, for sure.
And if by conflating the two, then you are a sissy, or you're being cold or whatever.
Yeah.
And we think that because a woman cries a lot, oh, she's emotional. She's not actually feeling her emotions. She's blocking them with tears. If it's all you're doing is crying, you're running from your emotions with tears. Right. You're feeling something, but you're not delving into what it is underneath.
Yeah.
And then exploring that. Because there are far more facets of the experience than just tears when you go through feeling your emotions.
Sure.
But until you learn how to do that, and unless somebody actually takes the time to explain to you that it's important, here's how you do it, this is why, there's different ways to do it, and here's the rewards that you will get. Not just like this is why it's important, but here's also all of the benefits that you'll get in addition to oh, I just feel more stable. And I don't know that people realize, because the brain is so simple, it's like a robot that doesn't have the ability to tell time. So when you reparent yourself, your brain doesn't understand that that's not happening to you when you were little.
Right.
If you connect with little you and you do the work, and this was where at first I was like, that's pretty kooky. Yeah, okay. And then I did it, and I was like, holy shit, it fucking works. And that, for me, was one of those like, oh my God moments, because again, why are we not teaching people this, especially people who have mental health issues? Why is this not the first thing we're teaching versus giving people a pill?
Right.
Before we give you a pill, let's make sure that you can actually connect with your emotions. Let's just make sure we can do that basic thing for you. And let's explain.
It's not a moneymaker for the pharmaceutical company, though.
That's true.
We've already had that talk.
That's true.
Yeah.
And that's just it, is we use different things to numb ourselves, as Michelle talks about, to numb ourselves out. Whether it's our vapes or alcohol or crying or being the victim or being a codependent person who runs around and takes care of everybody, or there's just gambling. There's so many different ways that we use to numb our feelings because there's so much going on in the world. Yeah. And a lot of us are just completely overwhelmed. And then if you add into that like childhood trauma and stuff, it can really become a lot. It can really become a lot to deal with.
For sure. I really found it fascinating how simply she explains it. Because a lot of times in my field, we like to use all the big words.
Yeah.
Like the more educated you are, somehow you need to use the big words. Like it doesn't make sense to me. But anyways, like she's able to explain it like really simply, really basically, to where you're like, oh, I mean that actually makes sense to me.
Yep.
Let me see if I can do that, and being able to kind of sit in there and being like, okay, well, what am I feeling? And allowing that adolescent to kind of get out of the way, be like, no, we'll circle back to you. Sit your ass down in that chair over there.
That's right.
What am I feeling? Like, what is really going on in the depths of my emotions? And then kind of understanding that from there. Which is kind of cool when we look at, I don't remember what podcast it was, what episode it was, when I talked about like the id, the ego, and the superego. And then when we talked more about DBT with the emotional, rational, and wise mind, like each chair represents those aspects too. Right. Like the id is very emotional. Like that is survival mode. It's extremely primitive. It's impulsive. It wants what it wants, and it wants what it wants now, but it doesn't have any understanding of why. It just does. So it's reacting for everything, and it's in the unconscious. So we're not necessarily paying attention to it. We just know that it's happening. And like the emotion mind's the same thing. It's all about the emotions. Every reaction you have is based on an emotion that you're having. So you're not thinking about it. You're like, oh, I walked into a chair. We've all done that, or hit our knee on something. Then got mad at the inanimate object. We're throwing it, we're kicking it, and we're cussing it out because we're just reacting emotionally to what's going on. We need our needs to be met, and we need them to be met now. Child chair, id, emotional mind, like they're all in the same area. And if we don't truly understand what we're feeling at the core of our id or at the core of our emotional mind while we sit in our child chair, then we're never going to be able to kind of move through things a lot easier and grasp things the way that we're wanting to or we're hoping to. Because it's like, why do I keep getting stuck in this place of just like being an asshole all the time or self-deprecating all the time? Or blaming myself or blaming others. Well, because we are consistently stuck for a lot longer than we would love to acknowledge in that adolescent chair.
Right. Like, why do I keep repeating the same relationships? Same thing.
It's not me, it's got to be them, until eventually we're like, maybe it is me. What's so wrong with me, or what's so wrong with them? Why does this keep happening to me? And not looking at like, okay, what is your role in things too? Not being able to think through things clearly.
Sure.
Which again is like what the ego and the rational mind are kind of similar in that. Like the ego wants to satisfy the id's desires, but in essentially what they describe as like the safest way possible. So a baby that's hungry and sees a snack is going to go snatch the snack. They don't care who it belongs to. They're going to eat it. Where like the ego is like, okay, that's not my snack that I can't snatch, but I know where my snacks are. So let's go to my snacks and take them. So there's a little bit more thought process when it comes to the ego and to the rational mind, a little bit more logic, a little bit more reasoning. Like I'm still going to get my needs met, but I need to go about them in a different way so that I'm not necessarily reacting on pure emotion.
Right.
But then that's where like all of our internal struggles can come from too. But we also know, like as a baby, toddler, a young child, like if we want something, we're going to go up and take it away from somebody. We haven't learned, hey, is it okay if I play with that? Or can I have that toy? And healthy parents are teaching us, like, it's not okay to snatch from kids. Like, you need to ask them, can I join in? Can I play? So we're slowly learning, like, okay, is this some acceptable weirdness? I still don't grasp the full right from wrong because my needs are not being met. So I need to find a way to get them met as quickly as possible, but with maybe the least amount of destruction or chaos that can sometimes be involved.
Right. And that's everything that we do is in some way to meet our needs.
Yep.
It's not about the other person.
No.
It's about us. It's about something that we're feeling, something that we need, something that we want. Mm-hmm. We may not recognize that.
Right.
A good example would be people who think that they go out and you go out and you compliment people. Oh, I love your dress. Oh my God, I love your hair. And they think, oh, I love people compliments. I love how how it makes them feel. You do, but you also love how it makes you feel.
Sure.
And that is the underlying thing that something is being fed there. It's not a bad thing.
Right.
But it's just one of those things to recognize, like, okay, am I doing this from a healthy place or an unhealthy place? Am I going around saying this because I'm hoping somebody's going to compliment me back?
Sure.
Or am I going around just trying to uplift people?
Yeah.
Because one,
there's a difference.
There's a huge difference. One needs much deeper discussion with your inner child about what you actually need versus the other's like, oh, I'm just celebrating being in a good mood.
Mm-hmm.
And then spreading that around. And that's the difference and that's why it's important to know which chair you're sitting in or which part of your ego you're sitting in.
Yeah.
I don't really care what you call it. I don't care if you call it the adolescent chair or the ego. I don't care if you call it the child chair, the id. It doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is that people understand that there is a drive, a deep human need to be seen, to be heard, and to have your needs met. And we are always working towards that, regardless of what you're doing. Even when you think you're doing something good for somebody, you're doing it for reasons that also help you too. And that's okay.
Yeah.
Just make sure that you're not doing it. And I say these things because I am one that will give from an unhealthy place. Because I want to have people feel that I'm needed, feel that I'm important. I don't have a regular job where I can have some of that fulfillment. And so I tend to look for it in other places. And I have to be very aware of what my motives are and why I am behaving the way that I am.
Yeah.
And that a lot of that comes from having that trauma brain, you know? This is not the same thing that people who are not neurodivergent or who haven't had the kind of traumatic upbringing that I did go through.
Yeah.
I'm now aware of that. I used to think like everybody was like this, and it was really confusing to me why everybody didn't react on the same level that I did, or get as upset, or care about the same things that I did. And took therapy, and then the adult, getting into the chairs, and I was like, oh, because you're always in your adolescent chair. And everybody else is at least sometimes in their adult. Okay. That's when I started realizing, like, some of the things that I do that make it a problem for me to interact with other people. This is not about shitting on myself. It's about recognizing, like, oh, I tend to make things about myself sometimes, and that can frustrate people. I tend to word vomit and tell a story to connect with somebody by sharing my experience. That's not what I should be doing. Things like that until you know, you don't know.
Right.
And unless somebody can maybe say it in a way that connects with you, you may never learn.
True. And I think that's a big piece, because so many people, especially in like the therapeutic world, like, we're saying certain things and like seeing like the glazed over look on clients' faces. And it's like, okay, that didn't resonate. Let me find something that does. And like I mentioned in the beginning, like, I'll find something that resonates with each of my clients, and I'll use whatever that is, whether it's a sports reference or a musical reference, or I don't know, a Harry Potter reference, because those are my favorites. But finding a way to connect with them and being like, okay, let me break it down. Like, what was I talking about? Oh, we were sitting somewhere over the weekend, and somebody started talking about like the different houses in Harry Potter, and like trying to figure out like which house you belong to. I'm like, how do you really know? Because aren't these houses kind of similar? And I'm like,
I know what you said.
Like this. Like, and I describe it like as a fight on the playground. And here's how each of you as a house would react to that. And they're like, oh, well, I would do this. I'm like, exactly. You would do that. This is why you are this. This is why you are that. You don't really need to take the test, because that's like a true test. But finding a different way to break it down simply, in a way that connects with people, especially when they're in their adolescent chair. It's like, okay, take a breath. Like, let's focus on like what you can feel here in the room, what you can see here in the room, in order to get you in the present, not stuck in the past, and not forecasting into the future. And bringing in that kind of like that super ego, which is like where all the values and morals are like coming in and more sedentary. No, cementing. Solidifying. There you go. I'm like, it's a word. I know it. Looking at like, okay, here's what society considers acceptable behavior. Here's what I feel is acceptable behavior. But also, like, I need to make sure that I'm doing the best that I can for me in this moment, while also recognizing how it's impacting others around me.
Yes.
So it's not just a selfishness. It's not just saying things just to say things to connect with people. It's like, okay, like I have a really great like story about that, but I don't know if people want to hear it. So let me just kind of see how it plays out. Okay, no, that story wasn't really relevant anymore. Okay, let me move on to this. And being able to manage things in a way that allows your emotions to be there, allows your thoughts to be there, but then also allows you to kind of contain them in a way that makes you feel like you're in your power.
Right.
Instead of kind of letting everybody else have it. Same thing with wise mind, being able to kind of rationally balance the emotions versus the thoughts and not just reacting for the sake of reacting, but then also not reacting, but finding the best way to express yourself, having a conversation being like, okay, old me would blow up and lose my shit because you just said A, B, or C. New me is like, it really hurt my feelings the way that you said that. Did you mean it to come off as this way or this way? Like being able to clarify what someone is saying without making more of those stories and assumptions, not coming from that place of adolescence, being like, okay, it looks like they actually had like a really rough day. Maybe they told me they were having a rough day, but now making it all about me. And then they make a face. So it's got to be me. They're pissed off at me now. What did I do? Like, I didn't do anything. And now I'm ready to fight. And it's like, take a breath. Okay, I was feeling a little rejected. They told me they're having a bad day. It's probably not about me. But let me clarify that it's not about me. Or let me just let it go because I know it's not about me. Being able to see all the actual facts and not just making shit up.
Or say, it doesn't matter whether it's about me or not.
Right.
Because I have actually gotten to that point where there's time where I'm like, you know what? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's about me or not. It's not my business what they think of me. I can't change anything. I'm going to exist how I am in my space. I'm not doing anything wrong and I'm not going to change. So don't worry about what they're thinking. Don't worry about what's going on in their face right now, Joanna. Just walk away. And that's one of the things that Michelle, like you talked about her saying it simply. And she says, I say this to my, what am I feeling right now? What is true for me right now in this moment?
Yeah.
What are facts? Facts I can list. Not what do I think? Not what do I believe? Not what am I sure of? I'm sure they're doing this. No. What do I know for a fact? That's what I can count on. That's what I can list. When I am in my adolescent chair and I'm having a hard time, okay, what are the facts? And if I can't back up whatever I'm feeling with a fact, then I need to back away from that feeling and go, wait a minute, because feelings aren't facts. And these thoughts aren't threats. So I definitely, even though I'm having this sensation, there's no mandate to act. I need to just calm down, take a breath, and see where I'm at. And I have now gotten to the point where I'm like, I'm gonna take a minute and I'll walk away. And I'll just walk away for a couple of minutes and then come back and then be different. Be in a different state of mind. There will be a different conversation going. There's a different topic happening. I've gotten out of whatever loop's happening. Because again, 99% of the time when I'm struggling, it's not about the other person. It's truly not. Even though it might feel like it and seem like it, they could be doing something shitty. But the thing is, there's something in me that they're hitting, or I wouldn't give a fuck. I'd be like, they're an asshole, and I'd walk away. But because they're hitting something inside me, it triggers that, and then I respond. And somehow they're attacking me. They're hurting me. And that's my protective self trying to be like, that's that primitive brain, like, oh, we got it. Oh, I don't like those feelings. Let's protect them. Let's make sure. And that same thing will happen. Michelle even talked about if I was talking to you and you started crying about your mom, for instance.
Right.
And that triggered feelings about my dad. And I went, oh, it's not, it's going to be okay. Like there'll be hospice and started trying to problem solve or trying to minimize or trying to shut you down in some way. And I'm doing that to make myself feel better. Even if I'm saying like, just perk up. Stay strong. Good vibes only. You're trying to help them, but you're really trying to get away from something that's been triggered in yourself. Because otherwise you would be able to sit with your person, your friend, whatever, in the emotions and be like, man, this sucks. I'm here for you. What do you need? How can I help?
Letting them feel it, like just letting them feel it, letting them express it.
Yep.
Even if it makes you uncomfortable, that is what they need right now. They may not need, like, there may not be any way to solve the problem in any way, shape, or form. And they may not want to hear how good it gets. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. Just give them that 5-10 minutes, and then they'll be like, thank you for listening. And because they've allowed themselves to stay in the child, to express what's going on, you've allowed them to stay where they're at, to allow them to express what's going on. And then it's like, okay, that's done. Now we can move forward instead of trying to change it or combat it or make you feel better when I'm feeling bad. And then it's like, okay, well, it's enough about me. Like, I'm good. Thank you for listening. Like, what about you? And it allows for a deeper relationship and a deeper connection, and just being able to allow people to feel whatever they're feeling, because a lot of the time it's not about you.
Right.
But we assume it's about us so much because
in some way,
everything is about us, especially when we're told this is your fault. If you didn't do this, this wouldn't happen. Like, you're making me feel this way. So we are taught at a young age, oh shit, they must be upset because it's my fault. Like, I did something to do this, so I need to fix it. Like, how can I fix it? When it's like, it's not about you. I just need a minute to be in my shit, and then I'll be fine.
Well, and kids internalize everything. Kids, because they live in their ego. So if an adult is acting one way one day and another way another day, kids assume that they did something. It was because of them. If that's a consistent, constant thing that's happening, kids are like, what am I doing? Why? What can I do? And that's how kids start to people please.
Yeah.
And start those unhealthy patterns early on, is because, like, well, I don't know what's safe and predictable, so let me do what I can to just make sure everybody's happy.
Yeah.
Because I don't know what caused it, but it's got to be something with me, so let me do what I can to fix it. Little kids just don't know any better.
No.
So it's, I don't know, it's been quite a journey. I just will say that I'm so grateful for this podcast and being able to talk out these things and work through this. But if I couldn't have done this process without mentioning the adult chair and doing a podcast on it, because it was not only pivotal in my own journey, but if other people connect with it and that helps them grow or heal some way, man, I think that would be amazing. There's nothing in there that's going to make society worse by you connecting with your true emotions and trying to be your authentic self and give yourself the space that you need to grow and heal and be who you are while you're doing that for others.
Absolutely.
And balancing triggers and all that. So
I'm glad you came across the podcast. And I'm glad that, we listened to it and we were able to kind of talk about it, and like realizing a lot of the things that I already do with clients by saying, like, okay, yeah, but what are you feeling? Well, like, I'm feeling like I feel fine, or like I'm feeling like I'm just mad. It's like, okay, underneath it, like, use an actual emotion word. Here's an emotion word wheel. Like, pick an actual emotion that is in your body right now. What is that emotion that is going on? And let's tap into that 5, 10, 15 seconds, whatever long you need. Being able to say, you know what, especially when, like, I'm doing reprocessing and we get to a certain point, then I'll put in there's a phrase for it. And I would love to remember it right now, because that would make it even better, but I can't remember what it's called. Anyways, but like saying, okay, this time, let's go with that. I want you, adult Joanna, I want you to go and check in with little Joanna. Just check in with her. And then, obviously starting the tapping or the eye movement or whatever it is that the therapist uses. And then being able to, because then there's a shift. And a lot of times there's a lot of crying and it's like, oh, like I was so scared and I was so alone. But then I went and I gave myself a hug.
Mm-hmm.
I gave myself a teddy bear. I gave myself a tissue and said, you know what? It's going to be okay. Because look at all these things you're going to be able to enjoy, even though right now you can't see it. Like, you're going to grow up to be me one day. You're going to grow up to have these people in your life, or these kids, these pets, or this job, whatever it is. You're going to do that because I'm you and you're me. And that has helped so much with the shift of oh my God, I can leave my childhood trauma there in the past. I don't have to carry it with me anymore. So allowing the id and the emotional mind to kind of feel it, having kind of the rational mind and the ego kind of just step aside for a minute. Wise mind and super ego, we need to bypass you for just a minute. We'll be back. Because as soon as you address that inner child chair, by the time you get to the adolescent, on your way out the door, they've relaxed. They're no longer in defensive posture. They're not ready to fight. They're not ready to scream. They're not ready to react. And then it's and all of that, obviously with repetition and a lot of practice, because you have to be consistent with it, you're able to do that really quickly in the span of 5 to 10 seconds while you're in the middle of a conversation with somebody. And being able to be hold on a second, let me think about that. Boom, doing your check-in, boom, back out. Okay, I can see what you're saying, how I came across, whatever, however the conversation is, versus blowing up at someone or just reacting just to react. So
getting defensive.
Yeah. I like the podcast a lot. She says a lot of really good stuff and makes it
digestible.
Yes. I almost said swallowable. That's not a word. Forget.
It is, but it's not the one we're looking for.
It's not the one we're looking for. So, but yeah, and I agree. The placement of this episode talking about these chairs, but then also how they connect with other stuff that we've already talked about in previous episodes. In Jason's words, it ties it up in a nice bow. It puts a bow on it. I fucked that up too. See, what can be Jason?
See what happens when you leave Michigan.
Slick head for it. He's got that slickness to his head that I don't have.
Well, it's a perfect segue to getting his thoughts and opinions on this.
It is.
And then he can tie this up with a bow or whatever his phrase is.
Whatever it is.
I don't know. We're not Jason. We're not cool enough.
Prior to putting a bow on this, let me just
say. Putting a bow on this. Okay.
There it goes.
There is a lot to digest here. First and foremost, I appreciate the fact that you used your time this week to shed spotlight on another podcast, on another podcast host that is making a difference. Fundamental networking like that is underappreciated, underutilized, and it is a very powerful tool. Word of mouth is still a very important thing.
Absolutely.
Even in the day and age of all the technological advances that we have here at our disposal, word of mouth still carries a shit ton of weight.
Mm-hmm.
And
the most, I think.
Yeah, because it's coming from your personal experience, how you feel about it. It's not manufactured. It's not, AI did not create it. It is as real as it gets.
And it's usually connected to somebody you know and trust in some way.
Right.
Sure.
Right. So I appreciate the fact that this particular, show, podcast, or what have you, resonated with you the way that it did. And in turn, you can let your listeners know, hey, if you're digging what we're doing here, you should really check out this other one here. And, it would, it's kind of like a spider web, man. It starts here and it just kind of branches out. That's just the way it goes, the way it should go anyway. So I appreciate that. The other thing here that I want to touch on, and this is something that I have really kind of harped on for the last several months, maybe even longer than that in personal conversations. The fact that there is such a perceived line in the sand between how men deal with shit and how women deal with shit, and this preconceived notion that there is a technical right way and wrong way to express how you're feeling and what you're going through. I am, as a man, I am trying to debunk that bullshit here in 2024. Yeah. And I'm no Chuck Norris. Make no mistake about it. But I consider myself a man. Like I know a little about a lot of shit. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. But the one thing that I have learned over the course of my time is men have feelings. It's okay to express them. And all of this preconceived and pre-established rules and regulations that we are supposed to follow and accept in order to earn the title of man is complete. It's trash. Yeah. It's time to throw that away. That has not aged well here where we're at now. And the sooner you get in line with that, the easier shit's going to be for you in the long run. I promise you, I guarantee you, I'll write the fucking book if that's what you need. Yeah. Because I have seen that. I have experienced that. I have undergone my own bouts of growth and things of this nature. And part of that was dialing into what I was feeling, how I was processing that, and in turn, how I presented that to my, for the lack of a better term, audience, whether it's personal or professional or what have you, personal or public. We'll say that. So, gentlemen who are listening to this, if you are of the mentality that in order to be a manly man, you got to do all this shit and lock your feelings, your emotions down. Don't cry and all that stuff. Throw it away. Throw it away. And if you are made to feel that that is what's happening and you surround yourself with people that make you feel like you are less than because you are acknowledging and trying to communicate what you're feeling, I would suggest you are hanging around the wrong fucking people. And you need to change your overall environment because, and it will suck. You will sever ties or your relationships that you've had for a long time may not be the same, but neither will you. But it's for the better because the sooner you get in line with what's happening internally, everything that you bring externally is going to make that much more sense. That level of anxiety and uncertainty is going right out the fucking window, and you can actually look forward to a brighter, a brighter future without worrying about how you're being perceived or what sort of persona you're trying to keep up. Because let me tell you, it's goddamn exhausting. Once you throw all that away and you focus on what I call the basic fundamentals of life, which includes being in line with what makes you tick, things will run a lot smoother in the long run.
Agreed. Absolutely.
That's my 2 cents for the week.
It's true. It is super true. And hopefully more and more men are realizing that and doing that and trying that because nobody needs to live with all the suck inside of them buried down. Like we don't. We really don't. Have conversations. Be vulnerable. It might hurt. But in the end, you're going to feel so much better about it.
And it takes so much strength to delve into these feelings and emotions and be real and raw and then express it externally in any way.
Yeah.
So to minimize that and to try and act like it's weak or it's somehow relegated only to one sex it's just a false narrative, and it's just something that you're going to have to accept. Nobody's going to be able to wave a magic wand and make society change. It's going to happen slowly, person by person, as we start keeping this work up and keep talking about it and keep bringing it into the spotlight and having men like Jason talking about it. Keith goes to therapy. He talks about it. He's open about his therapy journey. The more men that are willing to talk about this, the less that it's going to get stigmatized on both sides. Because right now, women are stigmatized for being, quote unquote, crazy and needing mental health help in any way. And it ends up being that we're overly emotional and we're, hysterical, histrionic, all of those things that really just aren't true. It's not specific to one sex or another. It's just we exhibit the symptoms a lot differently. That's all. Yeah. And not everybody, not every woman, not every man, not every person. But in general, because of the way society has taught us, because we all come out of the womb, let's not forget, we all come out of the womb screaming, having the same needs, making the same demands, shitting ourselves, wanting people to just come and hold us, just wanting human connection, wanting hugs, wanting kisses. We want all of that stuff when we're little. We want those connections. We want that real human one-on-one, whether we're male or female. And it's through our societal experiences that it gets changed. And it's not going to change back until we make an effort as a society to start to keep doing it. And we have been, but we just have to keep pushing forward. So thank you, Jason, for that insight into it. I always appreciate when any man advocates for mental health, because it did feel for a long time like it was an echo chamber of just a lot of women and then mental health professionals who could be male, but just your average everyday Joe, especially a guy who's into wrestling, like that's not somebody you would have heard advocating for mental health for either sex, certainly for men 10, 15 years ago.
No, that's the big problem.
Exactly.
It's a huge problem. And I have seen firsthand how diving into unlocking, bringing those walls down is a phrase I use quite often. You don't got to bring them all the way down with one push of the button. It can be a gradual thing based on your comfort level, but you got to at least put in an effort. And the other thing that I always say is you can bullshit everybody else if you put enough time and effort into it, but the one person you will never bullshit is yourself.
Right.
Because you will always have that knot in the pit of your stomach. It may not be an overwhelming thing, but it's going to be there and it's going to make its presence known.
Right.
That's facts. Unless you have no conscience, unless you have no soul, and in which case that's a conversation on a different level for another day. But I will always, and I was dialed into that shit a long time ago, because listen, I understand what it's like to have your feelings invalidated, to be told, I don't have time for this, or suck it up, or this, that, or the other thing. Like, I know how that makes a guy feel. And fuck all that.
Right.
We get one life to live. One. And if you dedicate that much time into being a persona, a gimmick, if you will, based on what has already been, deemed normal, you are wasting your time here. And for what? For what? So I will always be an advocate. Men, women, doesn't matter. You got to get good up here before, if you're good up here, anything is possible. Anything is possible. I don't give a fuck what it is. But if you're not dialed in with here, you're putting yourself behind the 8 ball right out of the gate.
Yeah.
And that's no way to live. So yeah, I got all day long to talk to men about it's okay. Trust me when I tell you, it's okay.
Right.
It will be okay. It may take some time, and it's going to suck. It ain't going to be a bed of roses.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You got to go through the thorns before you get to the rose. But I'm here to tell you that rose is fucking worth it when you get there. I promise you it will be.
Mm-hmm.
Pen drop.
Preaching to the
I like it. I like it. And that's a cool analogy. Like you think
Yeah.
about a rose growing, like it's got to start like out of the ground in the dirt and be nurtured and cared for. Child share, emotional mind. Then it kind of grows and it's growing all these little thorny things on it to protect itself. Adolescent share, ego, rational mind, until it becomes this beautiful rose that everybody sees, which is the adult share, the super ego, and the wise mind. So, excellent metaphor, Jason, without even
feel free to use that, Natalie.
She just did. Do your own pen drop.
That was really good. Yeah.
That was very good. Very good, guys.
I know
Let's cut that and put it at the beginning so people will hear it. No, I'm just kidding.
On this week's episode.
That's right.
All right. Anything else?
I don't think so. No, I wrote my notes out so I would have them in my brain. I didn't actually. I looked at them and was like, yeah, I can't read that.
Well, this was another fine episode. I don't mind telling you. Anybody who has questions, comments, feedback, anything of the sort, you can find the ladies over on Facebook. Look for the Shh, We Don't Talk About That page there. Or you can find them over on pfcnetwork.net, the official website of all of our shows here. And here is the website for our brand new online store with over 320 something brand new items on there, many of which does adorn the logos and likenesses of the two lovely ladies that you just listened to. You can go to pfcstore.printify.me. M-E. I don't know why that's a thing, but be that as it may. We will put a link in the description.
It's all about me, Jason.
Yeah, well, see, this is another. I'm not.
That's for another podcast.
That's for another show. Yeah, another time. But with that, we appreciate everybody tuning in. Go out, be awesome to yourselves and to each other. And we'll see you next time right here on Shh, We Don't Talk About That here on the PFC Entertainment Network.